the fact that it fucking did it twice. Well, technically 3 times if you want to take into account the Celtic Holocaust
Yeah.
and Roman times. But like again, I mean seriously, let's go back and let's talk about the Battle of Teutoburg Forest. Like that was literally a bunch of fucking Germanic Celtic fucking tribes that defeated the greatest military on the planet at the time.
Wait, what the hell? Tanner, you're not online?
Me? I'm online, yeah.
He's on.
What?
Oh. Hit N on your keyboard and accept that.
N on my keyboard.
Yeah, as in November.
Join a clan, floor wardens, accept.
Did you start one up, DZ?
No, I have not. I will momentarily though. I'm just gonna chew these low tier keys just for the whatever. Like you're gonna get fucking top tons of XP anyway, so.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So, like the Celtic / Germanic peoples were fucking strong, and then like here. So we've all heard of Keynesian economics, right?
Not that particular.
So Keynesian economics. So John Maynard Keynes was a British philosopher / economist who was the guy who invented the economic theory of essentially you can spend your way out of debt. And this guy's a fucking retard, by the way. So he
You're talking about the Asian dude?
No, he's British.
I've seen an Asian dude talking about that shit, but not a British dude.
Well, Keynes is literally the guy that created this as a concept. So, basically, so this was like right around the time of Germany being the prevailing economic / educational power in the world. Okay, and one of the most thorough, essentially counter theories to any of the Keynesian economic theories is that Keynes didn't speak, read, or write German, which means that during the time that he formulated all of his theories, he was unable. So it would be like a Chinese philosopher, economist that couldn't read English when we are the prevailing economic power in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, the best in class current information on these theories was inaccessible to him as a primary source. And he, unfortunately, a lot of these things became very prevalent. So, for example, FDR, through his idiotic fucking economic theories, did something known as pump priming, which is essentially the application of Keynesian theory. So you inject governmental money into the economy as a means to spur
like a severance
growth.
package or some shit like that.
Yeah. Look at the Obama bailout. That would be an example of pump priming as well. But all Keynesian theories have been disproven. Like, what that was his name?
The amount of inflation would overtake the amount of money that you'd be putting in anyway, wouldn't it?
Well, so if you really, because this is obviously like a matter of settled history at this particular point, like the Obama bailouts, you can be like, well, that's still technically ongoing. It was only 10 years ago. But if you go back and look at the Great Depression and the recovery therein, specifically regarding the NRA, which is the National Recovery Act in American politics, not the gun organization.
The act, yeah.
FDR extended the Great Depression by about 5 years with this idiotic fucking hampering in the American economy.
Well, aren't we in a worse economical stage than the Great Depression anyway, right now?
So what we did with regard to the whole Biden inflation thing is we recreated something from the 1970s known as stagflation. So what happened in the 1970s is we underwent... Ooh, you're fucked.
Nope.
Is we underwent a period of slowing economic growth conjoined with rapid inflation. And unfortunately, what that entails is... So your opportunities are less, and your money is worth more. So like essentially, you're getting fucking airtighted by getting fucked in both holes.
Yeah. Okay.
Like that's what stagflation is. And conjoined with that, there was also an energy crisis during the 1970s because OPEC formed itself in the late 60s, early 70s, whatever the fuck, and that stands for the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. And what they did is they formed what was essentially an international cartel and started
So
trying
that's
to
the
defraud.
Rockefellers.
No,
No?
so these were like the Middle Eastern states themselves, like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, got with the Kingdom of like Iran in like the 50s and tried to play fuck with this, but it took off
Oh,
and like
okay.
really fucking. So the Iranians before, and I'm sorry for the tangent, but the Iranians before the revolution were our closest ally in the region to a point to where they could buy any non-nuclear weapon that they wanted from the U.S. arsenal. Like they were an extremely friendly nation. But they had the Islamo-fascist revolution in there, and here we are. Um, so, like, the Middle East was destabilized by that, and Russia, to a certain extent, ended up doing that because they were such a good ally to us. In the same way that we were feeding weapons during the 1970s into Afghanistan and Chechnya. So, for example,
Yep.
there's a great movie on this called Charlie Wilson's War. This he's a senator from like Texas or something, but he was like one of those guys who was like in the Senate for like 20 fucking years, and he like personally fucking like footballed all these like CIA programs to feed, for example, anti-air missiles to the like the precursor of the fucking Taliban.
The Mujahideen or whatever. Is that who it
No,
is?
the Mujahideen would have been that's more Arabic. So okay, so there are three races of Muslims or Muslims. So there's Persian, which is essentially Iran and like part of Iraq, and then you have this Turkic band, which is basically Turkey wrapping up to like Mongolia. So like the weaker Muslims are technically Turkic. The Turkics were always very nomadic. And then you have the
God
Sunnis.
damn it.
The Sunni Muslims are basically anybody on the Arabian Plateau. So, for example, these groups of Muslims fucking hate each other. So all that
Mm-hmm.
sectarian violence during the global war on terrorism in Iraq was basically Iran was trying to fan the flames of revolution to cause Iraq to destabilize enough to where they could essentially annex it. So Iraq was 85% Shia, which is Persian, not Arabic. And the American intervention essentially sustained the Sunni, or more appropriately, Arabic power to check Iran in that region, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So there are three races of Muslims, um, and we were kind of playing one another. So, for example, we were allied with the Persians vis-a-vis the whole, stuff going on until the revolution, the 1978 Islamic Revolution, whatever the fuck it was, 1971. It was during Carter, so it had to be the late 70s. We were funneling weapons into Afghanistan. So Afghanistan was the Soviet Union's Vietnam, essentially, and it was because
Mm-hmm.
we were feeding them weapons. In the same way that during Vietnam, the Russians were funneling weapons into Vietnam. Like, like every country fucking does this. It's just a matter
Yeah,
of like,
it's like a proxy war essentially. They're funneling all their shit in there.
yeah,
They're not fighting the war themselves.
exactly. So, for example, there are like 24 wars going on right now. Most of them are in Africa, and we're in a de facto economic war with the Chinese government right now, all over Africa. So what happened was once the global war on terrorism kind of kicked off a little bit and it got stable, the Americans, instead of creating essentially a Southeast Asia command, they relocated the Middle East under CENTCOM, which stands for Central Command, and then created a new four-star command known as AFRICOM, and that's essentially the military command that the African continent falls under for basically all of sub-Saharan Africa. So this is where we're like trying to like outbid the Chinese on all these things, or in Zaire, People's Republic of the Congo post-revolution has these massive supplies of yellow cake uranium, which is basically like where most of the fuel for the nuclear weapons comes from, and the Chinese were like trying to blah blah blah, and then the Chinese started going after rare earth minerals, which the largest proven reserves of rare earth minerals. Sorry, I'll start a key. Oh, that works too. So
Oh, I have no waypoints in this character.
I'll get you. I think this might actually be a fucking quest unlock too. Let's see if you can port to me get the waypoint. So anyway, yeah. So Afghanistan has the largest proven reserves of rare earth minerals because the fucking Himalayas are right there. You know, all those rare earth minerals got pushed essentially up to the surface, right?
Mm-hmm.
So guess what? We just turned over to the fucking Chinese, the largest fucking deposit of those fucking minerals on the planet.
Yeah.
Because all those fucking Chinese firms just stepped right the fuck in, and here you go.
Yeah.
It's like we're arming our fucking enemy, fucking morons.
Literally. Well, don't worry. Look what Canada's doing. We're literally helping them figure out how to kill us in the winter. Trudeau had let in Chinese soldiers.
Yeah,
and
they
we
let a brigade
trained
in
them.
last winter.
We trained them how to fight in the winter. Like,
That's
how
a
the
problem
hell?
unto itself because, you know, they're a NATO member.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Canada is essentially the United States. Like,
Yeah,
the
essentially, just without the name.
Yeah.
And the constitution that makes it so.
well, I mean, Trudeau has done a good job fucking your country up.
Yeah, well, I knew that it'd be a bad time the moment he fucking got in.
Yeah, I guess we could probably be a little better off calling him, you know, Castro's son. But
Yeah, I was gonna say.
well, I mean, like his mother was known for sleeping around.
I mean, look at him. Like, literally, if you just look at the features of him,
Yes.
Castro is like, in his eyebrows is literally where I see it the most. Like,
Actually, the closer genetics. Okay, so basically, hold your face up to your mouth like you're trying to fucking yell, but like fan your fingers out. So basically, it looks like your pointer finger is on your nose,
mm-hmm.
but like you can see your palms in the mirror. Okay.
Yep.
So do that on your face, and do it on your father's face. So the mouth, chin region is actually, for males, is actually taken directly from the paternal parent. That's like 100% true.
Okay. And
Or
then,
maybe 95, but you get my fucking point.
yeah, essentially, yeah. It's not gonna be for every single person. Genetic difference. Yeah.
If you want a fucking gnarly one, look at Mike Holmes's daughter, and look at her fucking mouth, and then look at her father. Ugh. I feel sorry for that fucking guy that married her.
Yeah.
I used to watch Holmes on Holmes when I was younger.
Oh, that's why. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't even think I've ever seen her. So.
Oh my god. I'll show you after we fucking get out of here. But yeah, the fucking yeah, like my father owned a fucking contracting company, so like I've always had like a huge interest in that. Like I've finished basements. I've fucking
Like I know, like I've seen him, but I don't know if I've seen his daughters. What I'm saying.
Oh no, I understand, and I'll send you a picture of her as an adult, but like my justification for being interested in that is essentially I grew up on construction sites, so it's just kind of seeing, like my brother and I actually fixed this entire house up just because it was shitty.
It was shitty.
I told I think it was Revenant the other day where they use conductive fittings for the plumbing. So what they do is I live in the desert, so all the like plumbing and electrical is actually ran through the roof of the house, like in the attic, and they serialize them and use conductive fittings. So like it was energizing the water supply, so people were getting like shocked in the shower, and they had to replumb this entire neighborhood. It's like 60 houses had to be completely replumbed.
Jeez.
Fucking stupid. But like I lost running water in my house for 3 days because these fucking morons decided to save $50 a house on fittings. But I digress. Fucking all that shit, blah blah blah, whatever. Like we actually used Canada as a POW camp during World War II. Like all the high value German. What's that?
Yeah, I was thinking Vietnam there for a second.
No. So
Yeah.
all the high value German prisoners were actually sent to camps in fucking basically Canada or like the Midwest. There's at Fort Leavenworth, which is where the Army's prison is. There were a bunch of prisoners that essentially did like an honor killing of one of their guys. You know, like that convict code, if you're an asshole, you get the fuck beaten out of you by your buddies. So they did that to somebody and killed them, and they hung like 8 of them. So there's actually a German POW section of the Leavenworth Cemetery.
Ooh. Well then.
Anyway, back on point is after that happened, so we took an entire army division during World War I, and that was the result of that was the road that connects basically Washington State to Juneau, Alaska. And it was like a 9-month road building, whatever the fuck, during World War II. And then during the Cold War, so the theory of attack, because there were no ICBMs back then, the theory of attack was the Soviets would fly over the Arctic Circle, over Canada, into the United States to drop atomic bombs. In essentially the like 1950s reasoning, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So there used to be a ton of essentially checkerboarded air defense sites all over essentially northern Canada that were manned by U.S. personnel, and that was those essentially 2 events were the beginning of Canadian and American
like joint operation, basically.
Yes. Well, because the Americans were still kind of pissed because, Canada was the invasion point into the United States during the fucking War of 1812.
Yeah, and I mean that's what they've been saying for most stuff is like China can just cross over through Alaska, or Russia could just go through Alaska, and then they just straight across Canada, straight down into the U.S.
Well, there's definitely that. But the thing is you still have the Rockies. The Rockies are a fantastic barrier. Like the geography of the United States is actually perfect for defense. So one thing you might want to consider is there's a paper that was written. Okay, so yeah, like the Army has like its own magazine. So does like the Intelligence Corps and the Army, the Air Force fighter jets. They have like their own like magazines, internal publications, and shit like that. Well, there's this Chinese essentially intelligence colonel who wrote a paper that got published in the Western media. I want to say like 2005 is when it started to kind of kick around, maybe 2008, and it was called the 6 Wars China Must Fight, and it's literally a like 70-year plan of the individual territorial grabs that China needs to undergo. So like they were supposed to take Taiwan by 2020 was for example one of the parts of the plan, and the goal. So obviously they're going to annex Mongolia because duh, you know, I mean that's just revenge for Genghis Khan, right?
Yep.
So they're if we look specifically at the history of China, this is tangential but it's relevant. When the Opium War happened, we had all these spheres of influence because in Japan, for example, the word gaijin is foreigner. That's also the same word they use as a racial slur toward Westerners. Okay, so the thing is that these far eastern civilizations are extraordinarily ethnocentric, and Japan in particular was the worst of it, where they closed their country off to, like, you needed the emperor's permission to even port. China, like, they invented gunpowder, for fuck's sake, but
Yeah.
they never really did anything with it. And
More
they,
or less for fireworks and whatnot.
well, no, they called it a dragon gun. So essentially, they would basically, so think of it like a shotgun, but without the pellets, and it would like shoot the flaming fucking gunpowder at you.
Dragon's breath.
Yes, essentially. This is a curse shrine, but so that was their application. They just never thought of like putting a
Putting
rocket
something
in there or
in there
something.
to get it contained. Yeah.
So, like they had, like they were definitely able. Like this is an ancient civilization. You're talking like the Qin dynasty is what 5,000 fucking years old.
Yeah.
Like yeah, even. But the thing is like the Chinese, for example, they call themselves the Middle Kingdom. They actually think they're the center of the world. Like the Earth revolves around China. It's a very ethnocentric notion.
Imagine
So
being
they're-
that self-centered.
They
Yeah, of course. Everyone knows it revolves around me. Jeez.
well the thing is like that bleeds over into how they perceive other cultures, and China did a thing essentially where they cordoned themselves off from the rest of the world, which means they were only developing independently. Like when you don't have access to other cultures, you can't see like, oh, this works over here, but it didn't work over here, or some type of historical thing. Like if you think of civilization not as clusters of people, but series of successful or failed experiments, that's the right way to look at it.
Especially per region, you can't do one thing in a desert environment that you would do in a jungle. That you have to adapt to the environment. You can't just.
Well, there's that, and then the thing I was talking about before, like that gravity concept in geopolitics. So Germany wasn't supposed to be a major power, and the reason why is it was sandwiched between the French and the Russians. So Germany was not supposed to be a thing. They were never supposed to be a power, according to that theory. And this is a Kissinger era theory of geopolitics for reference. But despite that, there are exceptions to these rules, because every rule has an exception. It's called a corollary for a fucking reason. But you can see all these things, and we can like that's the thing that made the United States so great is we weren't bound to a particular culture or economic system. We had no landed gentry per se. We were able to pick all of the successful pieces of all the other cultures, and we took over the fucking world. Like, one of the greatest advancements in the United States was a matter of legal doctrine where we could patent things. So you used to have under the English system, you had to have a royal warrant, which means the king and his advisors had to sign off on your invention. And even at that, you'd only have to be able to sell it to the crown. Fuck that. Like, this is your invention, right? So the concept, like in the Constitution itself, your patents gave you 20 years of advantage in recognition of you coming up with the concept first.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed a lot of fortunes to come to play, especially with the like oil was just becoming a fucking thing at that point, right? So, and there were tons of. Can you pick up the thing over here? Thank you. There were tons of oil fields, particularly in Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, in the colonial times, and they were fucking using it as like oil, like the lanterns and shit. So they had no application for it. But the fact that we had the economic freedom to do that allowed for people to compete independently of the crown and maintain an advantage over others for essentially thinking of it first. The problem is that like Walt Disney, literally the Disney Corporation in particular, bastardized this to a point to where now we have immortal citizens vis-a-vis corporations that can, oh, well, we came out with this Star Wars film 19 years ago, so the patent is still present.
Wrong button.
Let's wait till the fire stops. Okay. like these things were supposed to be individual rights, but now through the bastardization of the Reconstruction amendments, we've established corporate personhood, which now establishes perpetual patents, which has now killed innovation in the West, absent essentially Fortune 500 companies or like very rare tech startups. Like that's a problem. We kind of fucked ourselves with that. But yeah, like Germany wasn't supposed to be a power. It's called the gravity theory, or whatever the fuck it's supposed to be. But all these things, like what does work, what doesn't work. But the Chinese, they fucked themselves. They closed off their civilization. They stagnated as a result, and then they experienced something known as the Century of Embarrassment. So essentially, you think the Opium War, and then they were forced to open up ports to the Westerners, and that corrupted their nation, and now they're trying to recover from that by taking it back on those Western powers. So, for example, you can see that in Xi's posturing through the Belt and Road. What are they trying to do? They're trying to make... So the Chinese have always had this massive army, but they have nowhere to bring it. Like, they don't really have a navy yet. They don't really have a lot of air assets. Like, this is essentially a third world nation with enough people to fucking matter.
Yeah.
And...
send waves and waves of their men at you.
Well, that's my grandfather during the fucking Korean War. He was defending a radar site, and he fired his 50 cal until the barrel drooped. Was how many fucking people he fucking fired at that day.
Yep.
Literally, the origin of the word zipper head is from how they would stop tanks by basically so many people would get run over by them, or it would slip on the guts, couldn't go anywhere, and you get a mobility kill. And it basically looked like the tank tread rolling over them. That's the origin of that word, the Korean War. But all these little interesting, like, just read for an hour a day on a couple of different topics, and it'll be fun the amount of shit that you can fucking weave into a conversation. But yeah, I'll send you a copy of the paper if you're curious. But the Chinese unto themselves are fucking retarded, which is funny. Like there's a going joke about the Chinese where the only thing they're good at is essentially dying. No, seriously.
Yep.
During the fucking Opium War and the period after that, there was this movement in martial arts that convinced people that essentially yoga poses made them bulletproof, and then they tried to fight the actual fucking army
with their chi energy.
Oh, these guys are fucking retarded.
Next one.
Oh yeah, I guess we could. Should, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, let me hook you up. I just sent
we don't have superpowers yet.
Do you want to see a copy of this too, Revenant?
No, I'm about to sleep. I got just a few levels before 50, and then I think I'll start looking at something of what I want to do.
I got you. Here you go, Mr. Tanner. But that is essentially the roadmap of planned Chinese expansion. Now, obviously, they violated their own fucking timeline, but
Naturally.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I get in depth on the Chinese thing, because I wrote my one of my undergraduate theses, my second undergraduate, I actually focused on Chinese cyber intelligence, counterintelligence against the United States. So I did like an entire module into like their history and all the other
propaganda, essentially, or
what's that?
Propaganda, essentially, like how they.
Well, like Maoism was like so. For example, if you read Guerrilla Warfare, which is essentially the handbook that Mao used,
Mm-hmm.
it establishes the basis for that, but also Che Guevara for Central America specifically was an expansion of Mao's work into that particular area of operations. So, like, obviously you've heard of Che Guevara, right?
Pretty sure.
He's
Somewhat.
a South American revolutionary that was trying to like turn Latin America communist, and he actually started as a fucking doctor. So he's a very intelligent guy, and then became essentially like a general in a revolutionary force. And the CIA fucking whacked him with his own fucking guys too. It was fucking hilarious.
Okay, yeah, I know who you're talking about now. I just had to see the picture of the fucking red,
Yeah,
red
he's that fucking
background.
faggot with the beret that all the fucking
Yeah.
18-year-old edgelords fucking wear.
Yeah. You have a shirt on, and you can see definitely that you don't know much about history.
Yeah, this pro-communist shirt brought to you by capitalism.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, sometimes it shows the lack of knowledge a lot of people do have,
well, I mean, yeah,
or ignorance to it, I suppose.
fuck capitalism. Posted from my iPhone. What
Yeah.
are you doing?
Yeah, and
Okay.
nobody likes oil industry at all, thanks to the glass that we're all looking through.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm surrounded by plastic.
Yeah.
Fucking morons.
Yeah,
Jesus
I'm
fuck.
only 25, and I feel like I'm leagues ahead of some people, but I always know that there's someone way more smarter than me, though.
Well, it doesn't matter. So even if we had similar intelligence, let's say you and I have the same IQ, okay?
Sure.
We do not have the same experience, so you can't expect me to have the same stuff as you,
views
right?
on things. And then plus, you also have about 15 years on me, too.
Exactly. So you know what IQ actually is, right?
Yeah, it's mostly about
It's just the ability to figure out
patterns
puzzles.
and-
That's it.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. So IQ, from a functional perspective, is how fast you can learn new information relative to how much you know, relative to how old you are. So kind of like IQ is like the speed of your processor, essentially, like in your
Okay,
head.
so it's like when you do an IQ test, that's just like a fucking speed test, like a what do you call it, benchmark.
Especially like the military IQ test that they give you is multifaceted, so you actually get like a better IQ score from that, in my opinion. With the ASVAB, if you look at your line scores. So, for example, the line scores are form the basis of something known as essentially categorical knowledge. Like, I am not a network engineer, but I know some stuff about it because I'm a cybersecurity professional. But I can't go toe to toe with Revenant because he would hand my ass to me if we were talking about something that he's directly working for like years and
Yeah,
years
like
and years longer than I have.
yeah,
So even if I had, a standard deviation of IQ on him, we have to look at the categorical
and
intelligence.
the functional knowledge too.
Too many
Not
people
only does he
understand.
do it
Too
for a
many
living,
people think that IQ has something to do with factual knowledge. It has nothing to do with factual knowledge.
What have you studied in that time? Like, it's literally just a measure of how fast you have learned the new information. Like, it just, like, people cannot correlate the type of speech that I'm engaging as like, oh, it's just like you. It's like, no! I read 3 to 4 hours a day on, like, what, couple dozen different topics? And this is essentially just the byproduct of 15 years of doing that. It has nothing to do with IQ.
yeah, and it also depends on, like, a lot of people can be really smart, and sure, maybe they didn't get a good IQ test at the time, but give them a little bit longer and an actual place to learn.
IQ doesn't
Like-
really change.
Yeah.
So the way IQ changes. So let's talk about serial killers for a moment because I have a direct example. Okay. So Ed Kemper is my favorite serial killer, and he had a really toxic mother, and he fucking smashed her head in. So he used to kill sorority girls because he was mad at his mother. She was an extremely abusive person, but he was also autistic as fuck. So like, he shot and killed. So his mother used to make him stay in the basement in the furnace room because he scared his sister. So like, they basically turned him into like a goblin, made him like stay literally live in the basement.
Basement, yeah.
And then he moved in with his grandparents, and his grandmother was basically just riding his fucking ass, and he shot his grandmother, and then his grandfather essentially like came home from the store, and he shot his grandfather when he was in the driveway, like before he came to the house, because he didn't. His exact answer was he didn't want his grandfather to see his wife that way. Like, does that sound like something somebody would say if they were on the spectrum? Like, there's
Yeah.
so he was placed in a juvenile facility, which was then converted over into like a psychiatric stay, and he um, was given an IQ test, like some like 125, whatever the fuck. But then he got like a trusted position. So people that are on the spectrum are very conscientious.
Yes.
Um, so you end up getting access to not positions of authority, but stations of authority, if that makes sense. Like you have no actual power, but you do. You
Yeah,
become
in the
like one of.
sense of what you do, like.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So he ended up administering a lot of the screening stuff for like like the shit that was too low down the totem pole for the doctors to do. And through that, he actually learned the symptoms that they were screening for and trained himself to be asymptomatic so he could get discharged at 21, even though he was still extremely mentally ill. And then as an adult, the doctors said, no matter what you do do not release this guy to his mother. He was 21, moved in with his mother. He started putting up with her shit and then started killing sorority girls out of frustration toward his mother. And then his mother mouthed off to him one time too many. He put a fucking hammer into her fucking head, cut her head off, took her larynx out, and put it through a fucking garbage disposal as a way to basically remove her ability symbolically to ever speak again.
Yeah.
So he, when as an adult, was IQ tested and was put somewhere in the low 140 range, which is where I am. So because he was so used to so like if you take IQ tests, you actually become good at not being smart, but good at taking IQ tests because you can learn the patterns of the questions. So that's why you're only supposed to take an IQ test technically once, maybe twice in your life, and not back to back, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, for example, when I took the ASVAB, I took it under a stress test condition because I didn't know any better. So I didn't sleep the night before, and I didn't eat. So basically, like, recruiter called me, "Hey, you're taking this test. It's 8 hours long. You can't go to school tomorrow." Okay, whatever. But like, he said it like I was joining and like leaving for the military the next day. So like, I packed a fucking bag. I thought like I just completely misunderstood what this guy was saying. So I was up nervous as fuck the whole night. Didn't eat dinner. Didn't eat breakfast. And despite that, still scored in the top 5% of the entire distribution under a fasted and sleep deprived state.
Well, there you go.
So it's like you can.
It's all about mental state, really, too. Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
stress resistance is it's not really like a learned ability, but you can overcome anything if your brain will let you.
Well, it's a matter of adaptation. So human beings are very adaptable, and we're very bad at planning, but very adaptable. It's kind of, I don't know, man. Like the beating that a human being can take is fucking staggering, especially if you've like been to war and see like you want your fucking manhood tested, go do some of that shit. And I'm just be like, oh, I'm a man and you're not, but like, I've seen it.
No, I agree. Like, I've never been, I couldn't even fathom it, but I feel like, it's the only way to know. Is to actually be there. Like, you can talk all this shit about how, like, badass you'll be, but you could be the guy that fucking shits his pants and throws up the moment you see someone get shot, right?
Yeah,
I was a lifeguard for 7 years, and I can say that there's a couple times where, a lot of my guards didn't know what the fuck to do, so you just have to take over. Like, I was a supervisor for about 7 years or so. No.
Yeah, the people that like freeze under pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And like, when that happens, I was the one that, okay, well, now I have to, like, basically man up, do all the parts that they're not doing, pick up the slack of everything else. So it's like, great. So I know hopefully I won't be the guy that freezes. I'm usually the one that acts, but I don't actually
Depends.
know
Like,
yet.
everybody has like this secret thing in their fucking head that will like break them every time. Like, everybody has a weakness. Everybody has a strength. Everybody has a weakness. And it might be multiple. It might be this innocuous fucking thing. It might be this horrendous thing. It might even be a thing that's influenced from childhood exposure. You know, like,
Yeah, like
um,
the slight trauma they went
yeah,
through when they were growing up.
yeah. There's an interesting aspect of female psychology, for example, where a woman who had like, we're not talking like run of the mill, we're talking like extreme trauma. Um, as an adult, those women, when they get stressed out, will mimic the voice consistent with the age they were when the trauma happened.
Right, it's like a age regression almost.
Essentially, yes. Yeah,
Because the
men want.
trauma hasn't healed since that point, so they revert back to what it was the
Well,
last time it was engaged.
there's a great saying on that shit. If you don't if you don't heal your wounds, you will bleed on those that didn't cut you.
Sounds about right.
Just north of me is where the bubble is.
I can't do it yet because I'm not 50.
Oh, what the fuck am I waiting for? You got time for one more? Or are you good?
Yeah, I got time for one more.
I'm just gonna dump my stat. I'm not gonna vendor. I'm just gonna dump the tab real quick. You can start a key if you want. But yeah, there's all sorts of little wacky things. Like, so for example, there's this test called a AAA. It's Adult Autism Assessment. Okay, and I wasn't diagnosed with autism until I was like, fucking, like, I was like 39.
Oh,
So
I
I did.
a couple years ago.
Yeah, like I didn't know. Like, it's like one of those things where it's just like that perfect answer to where.
Why you seemed like you were just different compared to the regular people or whatever?
Well, it also provided an explanation for all the fucking problems I had when I was growing up, because autism is functionally a conduct disorder, right? Like, it doesn't mean that I'm misbehaving, but I'm definitely not behaving consistent with how I would be expected to. It would be, for example, if you saw a 40-year-old that was acting like a 17-year-old, that is, deviant behavior, because we don't want 40-year-olds acting like 17-year-olds. 17-year-olds are terrible fucking people.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But, so it's scored out of 50, and I scored a 45. And, like that's how bad. So what I did was I treated it like the science problem that it fucking is. So I spent, it's like 5-6 years, whatever the fuck, like, learning how to do like body language interpretation. You'll notice, based on the various topics that I've touched on just like naturally in this conversation, I pay heavy attention to like intonation, because I don't get the context, because I don't understand the context, because I was born without that part of my brain. So I learned, oh, that word under these circumstances. So kind of like when people are like joking around and stuff, there's like a delay in how I talk, right? I don't know if you've noticed that yet, but essentially, I have to like, oh, that means this, so therefore this means this.
Yeah. You don't have the actual context of what was being said, but you can actually, based on the mannerisms, figure out what was actually being said, by meaning.
So it just kind of like, it made it a lot easier. But essentially, I can basically admit that I spent like 2 to 3 years of my life like studying eyebrow movements, for fuck's sake, just trying to like make sense of all this stuff. Like, women are an absolute lost cause for me.
Yeah.
Well, so here's an interesting another artifact fact from psychology. So what is pure emotion from a clinical perspective?
Hold on 2 seconds. We gotta pause this conversation. I'm right in the middle of a cutscene.
Okay.
Can't hear you. Okay, continue. You said
So what is
emotion.
pure emotion from a clinical perspective?
Okay.
Chemical reaction
I
in the
don't-
brain.
No.
Well, chemical reactions in the brain are a matter of psychiatry, not psychology.
Mm-hmm.
It's two different
Pure
animals.
emotion. I don't know.
Okay, so pure emotion from the psychological perspective is feminine because, women being more emotional, right?
Right.
So pure emotion, or a being that exhibits pure emotion, is psychopathy because people acting irrationally is consistent with those behaviors, right?
Sure.
Okay, so what is pure logic, the masculine side of the spectrum?
Yeah.
No,
Like,
so what is pure logic?
Pure logic. I don't know. Like
With-
you'll have to aid me through this. I don't know.
So pure logic is literally autism.
Okay, there you go.
Because there's no emotionality whatsoever because we don't really feel
Yeah.
emotion.
Yeah, there's no emotion involved. Okay, there you go. Pure logic. Yeah, I got what you're trying to say. Now.
So we essentially have a concentrated version because everybody is sort of female and sort of male. Like there's no such thing as like a purely masculine whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the philosopher who came up with a lot of these concepts, they bastardized a lot of his fucking findings to essentially justify transgenderism, which is just demonstrably not correct. Like you can be a tomboy and be just fine. It's just
Yeah.
semi-masculine
You'll
being
have
a woman. Like, so what?
Yeah.
But no. We're normal, so let's chop our genitalia off. Fucking idiots.
Mm-hmm. Yep. God
Yeah,
made you just the way you are. Stay
Yeah,
that
let's
way.
talk about that 40% suicide rate, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But irrespective, so one of the theories that I had looked into, and obviously I don't know necessarily if this is like scientifically sound, is the presentation of the birth control pill causes a lot of these essentially hormone issues in women to where they're producing way more estrogen or they're therefore way more emotional.
Yeah, I've heard a couple things about that.
And the thing is that they're that's excreted via urine into the water supply, by the way.
Yep.
And then you also
recycled because you can't get that out of the water.
well, it was the same thing with bisphenol A when it was still present in like can linings and fucking water bottles and stuff. That's a phytoestrogen. And men drinking water out of fucking plastic during that period, well, guess what?
Yeah,
You know.
more estrogen. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's so. Actually, this actually ties in with something I'm doing right now. So I'm eating like fucking a pound of fucking red meat per day, and I'm eating red cabbage, which red cabbage specifically has a high concentration of a compound, which is essentially an anti-estrogen. So I'm basically.
I kind of heard you were saying this earlier to Faceless there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm kind of looping back on that as the concept,
Yeah.
well, just to kind of justify what I was doing, and it's relevant to what we were speaking of.
Yeah.
There you go. But I'm doing that, and then I'm going to do a fast. But I want my testosterone as high as I can manage dietarily before I do that.
Right.
And then that will give me a really good kickstart for this next phase of the diet.
Want to do one more?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's go. I mean, I'll go all fucking night. You tell me
No.
when you're.
No.
I got 3 bars left and then I am snoozing.
Yep.
Once I get out of this dungeon, I'm going to bed.
You guys have no constitution whatsoever. Just you guys and your fucking jobs and social
Yeah.
fucking commitments. I'm disgusted by both of you.
Yep.
But
Yeah, unfortunately, I got too much responsibility going on over here.
I spend almost 2 hours a day doing veterinary care, so I get it. Fucking homeboy this morning interrupted me while I was giving my dog an IV to talk about patch notes.
Who, me?
Yeah, I literally, I had a.
What,
I had-
that one little fucking What is it? Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 words interrupted your whole day?
Yeah.
Oh no. I'm saying that that occurred literally while I had a needle in my dog's neck. I was like, yeah, I can't really do this right now.
And you took a break with the needle in your dog's neck to be like, yeah, I'm just waking up.
Yeah. It's one of those.
Needles hanging out of the dog. He's like, hold on, let me check for you.
Well, because so the one dog bed is like right next to my thing, so I'm basically administering it from my chair. So I have two IV stations. The one is in my bedroom, and the one is in my office now. And so I basically.
Fuck. There's guys at the entrance.
I probably TP on you. Get you in a sec. Oh yeah. But
Okay.
yeah, it's like I have to custom cook all his food because he has all these different dietary restrictions, and all his eye drops, and 2 IVs a day, and a medicated bath every week, and all this like. So essentially, I'm like I don't have a job because I'm retired, but I am essentially a full-time veterinary nurse.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask you. Is you said you were in the military. I was wondering if you still were, but
Oh
you're
no,
just
I'm retired.
okay.
I have essentially a medical retirement from the military. I got a little banged up during the war,
Okay, yeah.
so all that shit, and then just kind of did some other government work, doing some other things, and then kind of went from there.
Right, but now
Like,
you're doing just some veterinary stuff. You're playing games, doing exactly what I want to be doing.
Well, I do a lot of side projects. Like I'm still writing a book. I just finished like a 7-year development of basically an analysis process for canine dermatology patterns, essentially.
Man, so you're still basically doing work just in your spare time, or what?
Well, no, it's kind of it ebbs and flows. Like right now, this game just came out, so I'm gonna play the fuck out of it for however long, and when I get bored of it, I'll go on to the next thing, or maybe I'll stick with it, or maybe I won't. I don't know. I don't really like to plan about things like this because the first season might suck dick, and we all quit in a week, right?
Yeah,
It's
right.
very unlikely, but yes.
Mhm.
But still,
That's one
we
thing.
want to be open up to the possibility. We don't want to say that, oh, this game is going to be fucking awful or it's going to be fucking amazing because now we've locked ourselves into a unfortunate set of circumstances that might not be consistent with the circumstances at hand.
I think it's gonna be good.
Yeah, that's one thing
It
about.
fucking better be.
I have ADHD. Apparently, that's what they all said growing up. I got diagnosed like real early on, but so I have a hard time sticking with games sometimes. So I'll get bored of them pretty quick after a bit. Like if I play the shit out of them, it's like, okay, well, now I gotta go play the shit out of something else.
Well, and some people are migratory in their gaming. Some people aren't.
Yeah, like I think, on my Steam just alone, I have over 300 games.
Yeah, I've done some. Yeah, like you play a game for like 20 hours. Oh, this fucking terrible, and you move on to the next thing. I probably 30, 40, 50 fucking times, and then you look and I have like 5,000 hours in fucking Path of Exile. It's like, oh, okay.
Right, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I wish I could do that and just find the same fucking people to play with instead of people to hop between all kinds of different games. Because I like playing a game, getting good at it, and just absolutely fucking wrecking everyone else. That's fun for me.
Mhm.
I can't stand when like I'm trying to play with like a group of people and they're like, "Well, new game just came out. I'm gonna go play Final Fantasy." Yeah, fuck you. Fuck your Final Fantasy. I hope you choke on the fucking box.
Yeah, well, that's one thing. I don't know if I don't think I have a game yet that has over 1,000 hours, let alone. I think the game that I have the most hours on is only 500 or so.
Bro, to put this into
What the
perspective,
fuck? Have you ever gotten a gem as a reward at the end of the dungeon?
rarely, maybe a dozen times. But yes.
Just got a blue fucking gem.
So Let me give you an idea. So I had a period where I had a really